Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are taking a really granular look at something fundamental. It's a blueprint for keeping people safe and, honestly, keeping projects on track.
hmm
We're diving into a safety training manual from the A.B.M project. The program itself is called Stay Safe, Stay Substance Free.
And that's really our mission today. We're not just, reading the rules off a page. We're trying to dissect this whole structured, multi-layered corporate strategy.
Right.
It's designed to enforce and maintain a substance-free work environment. It's about understanding how they move beyond just saying, don't do this, to actively shaping the entire site culture.
All to boost productivity and, most importantly, prevent some really serious harm.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's unpack this right away. Let's start with the scope. Because when the manual talks about substances, they are incredibly precise.
They are.
They target the usual suspects, of course, alcohol. But they don't just say alcohol. They list wine and beer specifically.
Yeah, and for tobacco products, it's not just cigarettes. They call out chewing tobacco and Gutkha.
And naming those products specifically, I mean, that tells you a lot, doesn't it?
It tells you so much about the environment and probably the workforce they're targeting. It anticipates what people are actually using, which makes the policy feel much more grounded and, frankly, harder to argue with.
That attention to detail is compelling. And this training, it's for everyone.
Universal.
Workers, supervisors, even outside contractors. No exceptions.
And that universality it's foundational. You have to have that to build a consistent safety culture. And the core objective, it really goes beyond just compliance.
It's the why.
It's the why. The training is set up to explain what they call the risk equation. They know that if workers get why substance use directly fuels accidents and injuries, they're more likely to actually internalize the rule.
Especially when you're around heavy machinery or hazardous materials.
Right. When the stakes are that high, preventing the why is really the only way you're going to prevent the incident itself.
So let's jump straight into those specifics. The first section of the manual really does not sugarcoat the health and safety consequences at all.
No, it creates a very clear, direct line connecting a personal health choice to an immediate operational risk. When they talk about tobacco and Gutkha, they lead with the big scary stuff.
The cancer risks mouth, lung, throat, and of course, nicotine addiction.
But then they strategically pivot, and this is the clever part, they pivot immediately to the collective problem.
Which is secondhand smoke.
Exactly. By emphasizing how secondhand smoke directly impacts coworkers who don't use these products, they turn it from an individual choice into a breach of team safety.
It's not just your problem anymore. You're making the workplace actively unsafe for the person next to you.
And with cigarettes specifically, they of course mention the cardiovascular and respiratory issues. But here's where it gets really strategic.
The fire hazard.
The fire hazard. The manual highlights this tangible, immediate danger of a smoking break on an industrial site. Improperly disposed butts, a stray spark.
That's an operational threat. I mean, long-term health risks affect productivity down the line, sure, but a fire can kill a project today.
It's a project killer. So eliminating that one behavior eliminates a constant low-level threat that somebody has to be supervising all the time.
Okay, so then moving to alcohol, which, again, they detail using wine and beer as examples. The manual zeroes in on immediate physical impairment.
Yeah, impaired coordination, slower reflexes,
Yeah.
but also the insidious part, the hangover effects that can cause accidents the next day.
And this is where the context of the A.B.M project site itself becomes so critical.
It's everything. We're likely talking about construction or heavy industry, maybe some really tough climates. So the manual flags this huge compounding factor.
Dehydration.
Dehydration. In a hot work environment, alcohol already impairs your judgment.
Yeah.
You combine that with the severe physiological effects of heat and dehydration.
And the risk just skyrockets.
It doesn't just increase, it spirals completely out of control. That combination dehydration plus delayed reflexes is a perfect recipe for a catastrophe if you're operating a forklift or working up on scaffolding.
And that leads us to the big number, the data that really underpins their whole zero-tolerance stance.
Right. They cite general industry statistics showing that substance use can increase injury rates, things like slips, falls, machinery mishaps.
By a dramatic 20 to 50%.
Wow.
Yeah, 20 to 50%. That is not a marginal increase. That is a massive multiplier.
For a project manager, that statistic changes everything. You're almost guaranteeing preventable injuries if substances are a factor. That's the hard data that justifies such a stringent policy.
And the manual frames this not just as a safety issue, but as an economic one, too, a drain on the project.
Oh, absolutely. They detail how health claims absenteeism from tobacco-related illnesses,
Mm.
all of that directly hits project scheduling and, of course, insurance premiums.
So safety isn't just an ethical thing, it's asset protection.
It's optimized asset protection. Every sick day, every insurance claim from something preventable is basically a tax on the project's bottom line.
Which shifts the whole discussion from just, follow the rules to this is a financial necessity.
Mhm.
So understanding that risk, that 20 to 50% number, it leads us right into the next question. Enforcement.
Right. How do you translate that quantified fear into an actual rules-based policy that works on the ground?
This is where we get to section 2. Policy, legal framework, and enforcement.
And the A.B.M. project policy is, well, it's an unambiguous zero-tolerance mandate, no wiggle room. They define prohibited substances so clearly.
Right, that alcohol includes wine, beer, etc.
Exactly. It's to make sure nobody can claim they found a technical loophole.
But what gives this site policy its real teeth beyond just being in the company handbook is the legal framework they build around it. They cite specific Indian legislation. For our listeners, outside that jurisdiction, why is that so strategic? Is it just about local compliance, or is there a bigger play here?
That is the critical strategic insight. When they reference, say, the Cigarettes and Other Tobacco Products Act of 2003, or COTPA, it does two things at once.
Right.
First, yes, it ensures local legal compliance. But second, and I think more powerfully, it shifts the perceived authority of the rule. It moves the conversation from HR is telling me what to do to.
2, this is standard public health practice backed by national law. It leverages the weight of the state.
Precisely. So now defying the policy isn't just breaking a company rule. It feels more like you're violating established public health standards.
And they also reference things like the Factories Act or the OSHWC code, right?
Yes, and that legally binds their zero-tolerance stance to official occupational safety requirements. It massively reduces their liability exposure right off the bat.
So if a contractor violates the policy, they're not just facing a slap on the wrist from the company. They're basically operating outside legally defined safety parameters. So what about the day-to-day enforcement? How does this stick?
The structure is very clear. The consequences are tiered. It ranges from written warnings and suspensions all the way to termination, depending on how bad the violation is.
But the policy also has this mechanism for anonymous tips to the site safety officer.
It does.
And I have to ask, doesn't that risk creating a sort of hostile, distrustful culture where people are looking over their shoulders instead of communicating?
That is the friction point.
Yeah.
It's a trade-off. The policy is choosing to prioritize collective risk mitigation over, let's say, trusting internal team dynamics.
So the idea is to empower a coworker who feels endangered to act without fear of getting in trouble themselves.
Exactly. It bypasses a supervisor who might be biased or, just reluctant to confront someone on their team. Given that 20 to 50% injury statistic, you can see why they'd make that rational, if somewhat cold, choice.
Unnecessary evil, maybe in a high-risk environment. And to make sure these facts actually sink in, they have a little quiz.
Yeah, a quick 5-question quiz at the end, like a simple true or false, secondhand smoke is harmless.
Which acts as that immediate check, right? Did you actually absorb the information?
It locks in the basics right away.
Okay, so understanding the rigidity of this policy leads us to what I think is maybe the most interesting section, how they actually support behavioral change.
Yes, Section 3. This is where they move beyond just punitive rules and get into proactive alternatives and, crucially, how they measure success.
This is where it goes from just being disciplinary to actually being supportive.
You have to. To get long-term success, you have to acknowledge the reality of addiction and stress. You can't just say stop.
So what kind of support are we talking
We're
about?
talking practical, evidence-based tools. Things like nicotine replacement therapy, resources for tracking apps to help you quit, and professional counseling referrals.
It sends a message, doesn't it, that the company sees addiction as a medical issue, not just a moral failing.
It does.
Yeah.
And they operationalize it. They give you the actual phone number for India's National Tobacco Quit line, 1-800-11-2356. They're not just vaguely suggesting help, they're handing you the tool.
And then the manual contrasts this, right? It contrasts substance use with healthy alternatives.
Yes, deliberately trying to replace the smoke break with a hydration break.
I even noticed they mention using non-alcoholic healthy refreshments in the training itself, water and fruits. It's subtle, but it's modeling the behavior they want to see.
It creates a physical counter-narrative, and tying this all together is the commitment pledge. Participants are asked to sign a voluntary pledge.
Why voluntary? What's the psychological play there?
It's the difference between compliance and commitment. A mandatory sign-off gets you legal compliance. A voluntary pledge asks for personal ownership.
So it shifts the mindset from, I follow the rules because I have to, I commit to this because I agree it protects my team. It's a huge psychological shift for a work site.
And this whole program is built around measurable outcomes. They are serious about proving the ROI on all of this.
The evaluation is multifaceted. First, you got the immediate impact, right? The pre- and post-training surveys to see if people actually learned anything. Did they absorb that 20 to 50% statistic?
Exactly. But the real proof, the long-term test, is in the data tracking.
Right.
They track site incidents and absenteeism over the next 3 to 6 months. That's how they assess the real-world impact. Fewer accidents, fewer missed days. That's the metric of success.
And they know a single training won't fix everything, so they plan a follow-up session in just 1 month.
Which shows persistence. They aren't expecting a magic fix. They're investing in continuous reinforcement because they know this is an ongoing battle.
So stepping back, what the A.B.M. project has really built here is, it's a textbook strategic safety blueprint.
It is. It's comprehensive.
It integrates health awareness, it leverages specific laws like COTPA, it offers practical support, and it backs it all up with measurable goals.
All designed to cut incidents, lower insurance costs, and just build a healthier, more productive workforce. It shows that effective safety isn't just about policing people.
It's just smart, integrated project management.
Exactly. It forces everyone on that site to take some ownership of the safety culture.
So before we wrap up, here's a final provocative thought for you to think about, one that sort of builds on this framework.
Okay.
If you have a strict zero-tolerance policy and you combine it with this mandatory tracking of site incidents and absenteeism over 3 to 6 months, how might that desire to show policy success, how might that unintentionally change how workers or even supervisors report minor issues? Could that pressure to keep the accident numbers low actually mask underlying problems? Could it turn safety tracking into a game of just hiding the incidents?
That's a critical question. The unintended consequences of high-stakes data tracking and what that does to, true operational honesty.
Something to consider as you apply this knowledge to your own work. That's all for today's deep dive. We hope this analysis helps you understand the strategies behind creating a truly effective and measured, substance-free workplace.